Alright everyone, this is part 3. Let me just make sure everything is working here. And that my video is coming through clearly. I think you guys could see it. Okay, so it looks like it's working. Alright, so I've done a couple things off camera in the scene, so this is what I got so far. And what I did is I created rocks, and I'm just going to go over what I did because I did a lot of stuff that I didn't do on camera because it was a lot of it was repetitive, and it would have taken up a lot of time and probably would have bored you guys, so I just did that part off camera. And then that was the texturing of the bark. So yeah, I'm gonna show you guys how I did that. So actually I noticed something with this mesh that I want to fix, and before I do anything, let's see, I think that my particle geometry, actually it's fine. Yeah, I guess this is okay. Alright, so what was going on is that if I go into camera view, you can see that I kind of edited the position of the trees, and that's because I had to adjust the trees where they were placed. I didn't want them in the lakes. So you could see now I got the trees not going in the lakes. There's a few that did. I'm not sure why, but overall, what I did is basically just used another weight paint map, and it's just going to take about a couple seconds to load that up. And of course it gets a little slower when you have more geometry. And then I just painted in on the plane. I painted the areas. Well, this is the wrong geometry actually. So let's go back to object mode. Okay, it's loading. And then I'm going to actually hide this plane because just for now. And I could leave the camera. Now, we have to find the particle plane, which is this one. This is the plane that's emitting all the particles. And for now, let's just in the viewport show the emitter. So we'll see this is the unsubdivided plane, which is the one to emit the particles. So if we go into weight paint mode, you'll see that in the water areas, I painted it blue. And I gave it a lower weight, and this is to basically tell Blender don't place trees inside of the lakes. So I just painted those areas blue, and then I set that as the factor for instead of the moss density, I set that for the tree density. So that's how I set up the weight paint for the trees. So I'm going to go back into object mode, and I'm actually going to just not show this because we don't want to see the low poly, we want the high poly version. So we got to wait for that to load. There it goes. And yeah, that's how I got the trees. So I'm just going to show you guys just how it looks now. And I could just set that to GPU. And whoop, preferences, make sure my GPU is enabled. And we'll just look at this for now. And I could always just go in here and make it very high contrast just to see kind of what we're generally going for here. And you see we got bark texturing if you look closely. And I'm going to show you how I did that right now. So let's go to one of these trees, zoom into it. So like this one, it doesn't have a lot of leaves on it, and that's because it's fall, so a lot of the leaves are falling off. But you can see I got a bark texture on it, and the way I did that is if I go into the materials of the tree and then select the trunk, I just set up a material here to it's very simple, relatively speaking. Don't actually need that one. So it's just a noise texture of Voronoi noise. I mixed in some noise texture to the original coordinates, set that to a Voronoi texture, gave that some bump, then mapped the range to a brown, dark brown to a light brown, and then set that as the color. And then I mixed in a transparent shader to hide these trees in the center, their original ones. And it basically says if it's not a particle, use the transparent shader, so it won't show the source mesh, it'll only show the particles, which is very important. So yeah, so that's how I got to there, and next we're gonna work on the rocks. So now these rocks I set up with subdivision and displace, and of course I created another texture. It's a little more complex, but it's the same basic thing, mixing in a lot of noise textures, distorting the coordinates, and using different ones for the bump mapping and the base color. And if I move the rocks, you will see that what's interesting is that I use global coordinates, which means it's using the world position, which means if you move this rock, you'll see its texture actually changes. And this is very powerful for procedurally generating rocks, because no matter where you place it, it will always be different. And I'm going to be using a particle system to instance these, so let's actually set that up now. So this is what the rocks look like. Let's go to a render just to see. Yeah, so it looks pretty good, and I added in some moss to the sides, and not real moss. I didn't actually instance geometry moss on it. It was probably be too rough for my computer, but I used a green area here to add some moss in so I could like change it, add in a little bit more. But I figured just a slight amount was okay. I'm gonna bring that back. So yeah, let's add in a particle system to instance this. So we're gonna find the original low poly plane, which I believe is this one. Let's just make sure. Nope. Actually, is this it? Nope. This is it. Okay. And before I do anything, let's hide the high poly version. I should rename these because it's getting a little bit confusing, so I'm going to call this high poly plane, just so I can remember things better. And then this I could call particle plane. So we can hide that for now and just go to a particle plane and turn it on in the viewport. So where is that option? Here it is. Okay. And I'm actually going to hide the trees for now. So I'll call that trees, and then the moss. And of course I'm regularly saving so I don't lose anything if Blender were to crash. Very important to do that from time to time. So now we can go into weight paint mode. And we want to create another vertex group. And let's call this rock placement. So we can paint in where we want our rocks to appear. And it's kind of difficult to say where I would want the rocks to be mostly, but I would say on the lower parts maybe I would want some. And let's just go to where the camera is, and you can see that the camera is viewing around here, so I want some around the camera especially. I don't want it to be that strong. Maybe something like this. I'm just kind of gonna go in and add random patches of where the rocks could be. And you could spend some time on this, but to make things look nice, so you want to place rocks where they would realistically appear. Like I don't think there'd be a rock on the tip of the mountain, so I could just bring down the strength on there, and I should at least be able to erase it. Whoops. Weight to 0. There we go. Yeah, so I'm just going to paint in and continue here where I really want these rocks to appear. Maybe give it some more strength, more weight. And I want a lot of rocks around the water. I think that would look pretty cool. But not all around it. I want it to be sort of random. Let's see what kind of brushes we got. Stroke. I'd like to add some jitter. Yeah, that's going to be nice, because now you got some kind of randomness. So I could add a little bit of jitter. But I think it's too much, maybe, so something like that would be pretty good. Yeah, that's not bad. So it's just going to randomize everything. Whoops, I did not want to paint on the top too much. And now I'm just going to get rid of the jitter to kind of make things more uniform here. Just kind of sculpting it in where I want these rocks to appear. I think this is alright. Like I said, I don't want rocks to be everywhere, so I kind of randomized it a lot. So we will go back to object mode. Before we do that though, we're going to call this rocks, rock density, and then go back to object mode, and then we will make another particle system. So this is our third particle system, and we'll say let's just do 500 for now, and we will set it to be the rocks. So collection, and then I called it rocks. And there we go. You see that our rocks are being placed, and we don't want any velocity. We also want to turn our forces down to 0, set the frame to be start 1, end 1, and we want the lifetime to be some really high number that you know you'll never go above in the frames. And let's just bring up the number to like 2000. And you see that it's being placed where we don't want it to, so we need to set it to user weight map. So we're going to set rock density, and now it's placing the rocks where we want them to be placed. You can see it's avoiding the areas we didn't paint in, and we need to set the scaling to be more random. So we're going to set, oh, actually, there's something else that didn't apply right. So we need to set the pick random. So we need to pick a random object. And you see it's using random rocks, which is great. Yeah, and remember that what you have to do is always set them to be at the texture coordinate. So Control A. We have to do that for all of them here. And just move it to be at the center like you did with everything else. And this is a little slow, so let's just disable it for now. And we could scale these down. And then apply the scale again. Actually, that messes up the scaling we first applied, so I'm just going to undo that. And I'm just going to move everything to be at the center. Just like that. Actually, there is a problem doing it this way, and I didn't realize it at first, but the textures now look the same. So we will have to apply the modifiers before doing this. So we are going to actually set this one to be, going to add in the smooth to this one, set it to be around 50 or so. This one we could just use as a reference, so we're just going to leave that over there. And then for these ones, we're going to just apply everything. So Control A. And that should apply all our modifiers. Just like that. And now you can scale things without anything changing. So again, we're just going to do that again. But this time you can scale it. Object set origin. Going to make it small so it's not too distracting. You can always scale it up in the particle settings later on. Gonna make it so it's positioned at the center, as close as I can get it. I think that's pretty good. Alright, so now we'll go back and enable the rocks again. We're going to name that. Now something odd is going on, and some of the particles are smaller than others. So let's see what's going on with that. Oh, yeah, I don't want to use this one. So I'm going to set that one to be outside of the collection. How do I remove it from the collection? Let's see. I'm just going to make a new collection and rock original. Okay, that moved it. Alright. Now let's try that again. Now all our rocks are going to be small, and that is easily fixed by just bringing up the scale to like 0.5, and then you see it looks like we're getting our rocks. Some of them are overlapping, and to be honest, even though you may not like it, it actually doesn't look bad in the render. Like if I render it out, it kind of actually makes things look more interesting, so I'm not going to worry about that. Now, what I want to do is set a lot of randomness to make things look realistic. 0.5, and maybe not have so many rocks. But actually what I would like to do is actually have like a layer with like 50,000 rocks or something that are smaller. And wow, that is a lot of rocks. That is a real lot of rocks. So let's go to the camera view. Okay, and it looks like that. I'm not sure what happened. Oh, the rock it's inside of the rock. Yikes. So, let's just take the view count down. It's a little bit slow to something more reasonable, like 20,000 for now. And just scale this one down so that our camera can kind of see. Let's see, how does the camera look now? Too much. Okay. No big deal. There we go. Just gonna get that out of the way. Okay, and we can see if we go to rendered, we just got a bunch of rocks. And of course I hit the other geometry, but you can kind of get the general idea of how these rocks look. And each one is unique, which is nice. And I could set up more randomness, because it does look a little bit uniform. So like for example, I could set up the scale randomness to 0.8 and the rotation to be 0.5. So it's all random. Now things look great. But, so let's enable everything else. And I'm probably going to turn this number way, way down, because I don't think I want that many rocks. You can see it's a little slow, but it's loading. And let's go to our particle plane and hide it. Let's enable the trees. And hopefully when we just look at this text render, it doesn't crash. Awesome. So you can see we got some rocks. I don't think they're too noticeable. You can see some of them there though. And I'm gonna lower the amount, to be honest. I think it's just too many. I'm gonna go with something like 5,000. But I'm gonna make some of them really big. Seems like none of them are rotating though. Not sure why. Oh. Has to update. That's why. Alright. Well, it does look like they're random, so that's good. Let's see, so I need them to be more... Some need to be larger. So I gotta find the scale factor, which is here. Okay. Let's go to 0.75. Maybe 1 for the randomness. Or I could even bring that up. Just view through the camera. And you can see I'm kind of getting how I want it to look. Got a rock there. Let's just view it regularly and see how things look. So these rocks are too big now. You wouldn't have rocks half the size of these trees. So, yeah, they're just too big. Let's scale them down to be 0.5 again. I think that's good. Just something kind of subtle might be better. maybe 3,000. So you can kind of see them in the distance, but yet they're not too visible. And especially if I zoom in, you see some are on the ground, and it kind of helps, and it will have moss in there, so that'll look nice. I think that looks good. I'm pretty happy with that. One thing I'm not happy with, though, is that I noticed some rocks are appearing up here. I kind of would like to get rid of some of these rocks. Maybe, or maybe it wouldn't look bad. I'm gonna actually leave them to see how it would look. Yeah. Just checking the original plane to make sure everything looks okay. I'm gonna duplicate it because I think something looks different. Not sure though. And it's gonna take a little bit of time. Oh, actually, I think it looks okay. Yeah, it looks fine actually. That's fine. Okay, so let's just take a look at it, the render again, just seeing how it looks. If you guys in the comments have anything you would like to add to this, I would love to add it in. Make this render look great. So yeah, this looks really good. Now, I could take this further and add something like some floating leaves to the lakes, and I think that would look nice. Yeah, I think that would look pretty cool if I added a few floating leaves into the lake. That would just bring like the final, that would like be like really just make the realism go up even more, and I think that's what I'm actually gonna do. So let's go ahead and do that and add some leaves to the lakes. So that's just gonna bring things to another level. So I am actually gonna do that, but let me first go to the particle plane and just I'm just gonna hide the trees in the viewport and the rocks to speed everything up so it's nice and fast. And I'm going to take the leaves of this tree, and I would do that by going into edit mode, just selecting one leaf. One leaf is all in, or I'll actually need 2 leaves. That will be enough. So I'm just going to select this leaf, Shift D, grab it on the Y-axis, put it somewhere there, P to separate, and then I'm going to take wherever that leaf is, which is right over here, and it should be separate. Yeah. So just going to call it leaf. And I can move that to a new collection. Call it leaf. Press OK. and set the origin to be to the geometry, scale it up so I could see it better. And actually something odd happened to it, so let's do that again. Okay, so we just gotta wait. Alright. Don't know why the shape changed so much. Let's see, does it look okay here? Here it looks actually normal, so I'm going to do that one more time. Separate it, and then move it again. On the y-axis. Looks okay. Okay, so we got one leaf done. And I could just rename it leaf. Move it to a new collection. Call it leaf. Kind of want to make it flat so it matches the ground. So because it's going to be floating in the water, so it has to be flat. And I'm going to select another leaf to have some variation. And that's going to be this tree, I believe. I think. You gotta find it. I know it's there somewhere. Yeah, there it is. This tree. This one. It's a little hard to see. So I'm going to select this leaf, and duplicate it. P to separate it. And then move it into leaf. So, leaf, willow, leaf. And then Japanese maple leaf. Okay. Scale that up. Oh, and I accidentally selected 2, so I'm just going to delete that one. And set the origin to be at the geometry. I could give this one a quick subdivide if I really wanted to, but I don't think I have to. I want to keep the poly count reasonable. Okay, so let's apply all the scale and make sure that these are pretty evenly placed. And again, these always have to be at the center, so let's set the origin to be at the geometry, and then move these at the center, as close to the center as possible. Or I could just do Alt M. I'm sorry. Shift G, would it be? Nope. Shift S. Selection to cursor. Yes, that would be. That makes things much easier. And then I could just scale it down. And yeah. Oh, but I want the cursor to be at the world origin. And then do that again. Selection to cursor, selection to cursor. Alright, so now we're going to make yet again another weight paint. So we're going to hide the high poly plane. I'm going to make sure our particle plane, we go back into particles, and we are going to make sure that the emitter is enabled for the viewport only, just temporarily, so we can get the weight painting done. So, viewport show, and we actually want to paint the lakes in this case. So we're going to go to weight paint and we're going to create a new vertex group. Call this one leaf density. And we will just paint this in. Now it's a little difficult to... Oh, actually, I'm doing this not correctly. Scratch that. Actually, what we're going to do is just not do that. So I'm going to disable that. And instead of adding the leaves to here, we're going to add them to the lake itself. Yeah, I didn't mean to do that, so yeah. Gonna go just into object mode and instead select the ocean, and that's what we'll use to make the leaves. Now we could just duplicate the ocean and then bring down the viewport resolution, something like 15, and the render maybe even lower to like 10. And that'll just be for the particles, so I'm going to apply that. Yeah. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this the part that makes the particles. So yeah, let's go to render as object. Don't want to show the emitter for the render, but let's just leave it on the viewport for now, or we can actually hide it. For the leaves, we want to use collection and set it to leaf, and we could use the pick random. Now nothing is showing up, and that's because I believe we need to set the normal to 0 and the forces to be 0, and we also need the, let's see, it would be the frame start and end to 1. And they are showing up. They actually are showing up, but they're just way too small. So we need to bring up the size. And some reason it's actually coming out very strange. Not sure why. Let's see. Oh, okay. I think it looks okay. It's just placing them a little bit below the water. I'm not sure why it's doing that. It's like doubling it up. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Is it random maybe I gotta use? Let's see, and I got the leaves placed at the center, I think. They should be, at least. Got the one leaf there. A little hard to see. There it is. I know what's going on, I think. So what it's doing is it's using the whole collection. No, it's not actually. I'm going to bring that up and take down the scale a lot. Bring up the number, and I think this is actually working okay. This is working fine, but the rotation is definitely not ideal. This should be randomized. Let's see. So I'm not getting the... I can't get the rotation to randomize, which is very important actually. Oh, now it works. Okay, so seems like I have to jump back a frame and then jump forward a frame to get it to apply. But I don't want it to be here. I think it would be global Z. Because now it's the wrong direction. I mean, I could always bait this out and see what happens. But the rotation is definitely wrong. Let's try baking that out again. Okay, now we're getting some randomness. Maybe I don't want it to be that random, so I'm going to go with something like that. That looks pretty good, I think. So some of the leaves are kind of like floating perfectly flat and some are not. And I want to make the size, I think the size is good actually. And maybe bring up the number to like 2500. Bake that again. And let's just go to the camera to view that. And we could just take a quick render of it. That's not bad at all. Yeah, I don't like the rotation exactly, so I'm gonna just adjust that. Delete bake. Maybe bring down the randomness a little bit more. Bake that again. That's perfect right there. So it's just a little bit, some of them are a little bit less flat than others. Okay, so let's go back and let's save this so we don't lose anything. And the particle plane, I can go back now and so this is the plane. Nope, this is the plane emitting the particles, so I'm going to name that leaf particle plane. Now, of course, for the viewport, we don't want the emitter to show, and for the render, we don't want it to show either, so that's good. Now we need to hide the, we need to view the high poly plane, and it's just going to take a couple seconds to load. Is this Premiere or live? This is live. I'm sorry, I wasn't checking the comments. Yeah, this is definitely live. So if you have any suggestions on what I could, how to improve this project, I would love to hear them. So yeah. So now I'm going to take the leaf particle, or the particle plane, and just going to disable, or should I? No, viewport, not show it. Okay, that works. And then I'm going to go to the high poly plane, and then I'm going to turn on the particles again. On the low poly plane, I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. And let's just turn on the trees. and the rocks. And now go to camera view. And we're just going to see how things look. Oh, this is nice. Okay, so let's just move that out of the way. Now let's see what we get. Oh, I use Blender, but I'm not professional. Well, let me tell you this. When I first started Blender, I had no idea what I was doing. I was really, really bad at it, but if you keep practicing and watching videos, you will definitely get good at it. And I put out a lot of courses. I'm going to be making a lot of them, so as you gain more experience in Blender, you definitely can make awesome stuff. And of course, if you got any questions, I will happily answer them. So yeah, it just takes a lot of practice, and with anything, you just got to stick with it. Don't give up, because yeah, so you just got to stick with it pretty much, and you will learn how to get more advanced in Blender, basically. When I first started, I had no idea what to do with nodes. It looked like another language to me. I just had no understanding of it. Nothing made sense. But as I used it, within less than a year, I got a lot more familiar with it, more comfortable with using more advanced node setups, until I do stuff like this regularly. And yeah. But trust me, I started out not knowing what I was doing in Blender at all. So anybody can become really good at Blender. It just takes some time, and you will get more familiar with it. How do I make that tree? Yes, you can ask questions. How did you make the trees? So what I did, let me just save this. Okay, things are a little bit slow here. So, gonna just hide the particles for now. So, the trees, I actually used an add-on. So, to do that, I just went to Edit Preferences, and then I went to Add-ons. Then I typed in Sapling Tree Gen. Enable that. And what I did is I added it in as a curve, and then you see it says Sapling Tree Gen. And this add-on is amazing. Basically, actually, I think it would be best to show you this in another Blender window, because this is kind of cluttered now. So let me just open up a new instance of Blender here. So what I did again is I added in preferences. Sapling Tree Gen. Then add it in as it's under the curve option. And there's the tree. So you could see, actually, and you don't want to click on it. Otherwise it applies everything, so I have to do it again. So you see you get a little menu here. You're going to want to click on this arrow to open it up. And you got a bunch of presets here on the bottom. So like for example, you could have like I used birch, white birch, and there's stuff like Douglas fir, which is extremely tall and giant. That would be nice for like a snow scene or something with a bunch of snow in it. Small pine. There is weeping willow, which is an excellent one. Small maple, which I'm actually going to show you how you can edit this now. So like I could set more branches to be on the top. There's all sorts of advanced options here. Randomness, you can just bring a random seed value and you get just random shapes. Leaves, yes, I was going to show you how to do the leaves. So to do the leaves, you go to under this menu here and select the leaves, and so the leaves should be showing up. So I'm going to add something like 500, just see what happens. And for some reason it's not showing up. Oh, so you have to check show leaves. And wow, there's too many leaves. Let's do only like 50. So they have to be a lot bigger. And maybe something like 100 leaves, or maybe 50. It's kind of hard to say. Yeah, I think 75 is good. And then that's how you could set that up. Yeah, and then all you have to do is just set a material for the leaves. So make it green. Give it a dark green color, and then the trunk, give that something like a brown color. And of course I used advanced noise textures, but this is just to show you kind of how to get a basic tree going. So then if you just render it, there you go. You got a basic tree, and then of course you can always customize the textures later on. But yeah, that's how I basically created the trees. So yeah. So let's go back to here and see where I was going. So yeah, it is cool. This add-on definitely can save a lot of time. I could model it, of course, using the shrink wrap modifier, and it would allow me to make more customizable trees. And you notice if I view the trees, that if you look at them too close, you notice it kind of looks like that the geometry isn't perfect. Like the geometry is intersecting, and it's just not it's not perfect for very close-up shots, but far away it looks pretty good. So ideally, if I was making a more detailed tree, I would probably use the shrink wrap workflow, which I can make another video about. But this is really good for making some pretty detailed trees that definitely look pretty realistic, as long as you're not right up close to them. Yeah. And especially from like an aerial view, like viewing this from an aerial view looks pretty interesting. If I go to rendered, actually those leaves in the water, I'm noticing that now, these leaves are way too big. So let's just take down that scale. Leaf particle plane. and bring down the scale to something like 0.3. That should be a little better. I'm going to go to the camera view and make sure that the leaf particle plane, I don't want it to is this, yeah, this is the leaf particle plane that's creating the, or no, it's not actually. Yeah, the aerial is pretty cool. So my PC specs, so I got, what do I got? Let me think. So I got a GTX 20, or no, I'm sorry, an RX 2060, and I have an i7 4790K CPU, and I have 16 gigabytes of RAM, and 250 gigabyte or something solid state drive, and honestly, that the amount of RAM I have is not nearly enough for what I'm doing. I've frequently gone beyond the RAM limit a number of times, especially when I do micro displacement. Ideally, I want to upgrade and get a computer with like 256 gigabytes of RAM to really handle everything properly, but of course it's a lot of money, so it's something that I'll definitely consider for later on. And I would love to get something like a Ryzen 3990X, but then again, money gets in the way, so but I will be definitely upgrading my PC at some point. Yeah, numpad 0 allows me to change my camera angle, so I could go and set it up like this, but I kind of wanted to save this view for the final render, but I could always create another camera angle, and then I'd be able to make like an animation where I pan above, which would look really cool. And keep in mind, you can have this file. It's going to be on my Patreon with the link in the description. And you will be able to use this file. You can use it for anything you want. You can use it in your own projects. If you subscribe to my Patreon. So yeah, I will be giving this file on my Patreon. But it won't be available right away. I'll probably have it up in like, let's say like 3 or 4 days. Or so. When this one's complete. So let's go back to camera view and just take a look and see how everything's looking generally. And I want to see where the leaves are coming from, so I believe it's this one. Yeah, this is it. And what I wanted to do is not show, yeah, for the render, I want to make sure that the low poly plane is not showing, which is good. So it's not showing, so that's correct. And the particle plane should also not be showing in the render or the viewport. So I gotta just double check that before I render this. Yeah, you probably did sub. Yeah, thank you for the subscription if you subscribed. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so also, again, I was going back in this particle plane. I could just hide that in the viewport, and I gotta find that viewport option, the render option. So it's not showing in the viewport, which is good, and render it's not showing, so that's good. And I think we're ready to do a test render, so let's do that. And before that, let's go to camera one more time, make sure the leaf scale looks ideal. I think those leaves look pretty good. Yeah. I could add a few more, but I'm not sure if I want to. I could go up to some really high number, like, let's say, like, I don't know, like the leaf plane. I could add something like 10,000. And honestly, that doesn't look bad. I might leave it at that. I think I'm actually going to go along with that. And I would like it would be nice if there was some variation in the sizing. Oh, you commented in your channel before and asked 2 or 3 questions in your YouTube videos. Which videos were they? I might have seen them. Yeah, I try to reply to all the comments as much as I can, so I'm sorry if I didn't reply to it. Let's go and turn the trees on and just make sure that the scale matches. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to give it a render. Let's just do 48 samples. Oh, so I did reply. Alright. Yeah, I don't remember. I think I might remember. I'm not sure which video it was on. Was it on the newest one with the paint splash I uploaded? Was it that video? Or maybe it was, I think it was the particle one, right? Yeah. Yeah, I remember now. Alright, so this is rendering. And we're going to get into a little bit of compositing next. So yeah, I think this looks okay. And you notice the moss is adding in. You don't see the moss in the viewport, but I added that in. So the viewer node, and then after the compositing, this contrast is too high. So how do you make that grass? Yeah, so the funny thing is, believe it or not, this is actually moss, not grass. But what I did is, I have the process in my other videos, but I'm gonna actually I can go through it again. So what I had is my particle plane, which is here, and what I did is, you're gonna think this is pretty crazy, but what I did is I took these tree models, removed all the colors from them, then I set that to make, I called it moss, but it kind of looks like grass too, so it doesn't really look different though, because I think I could see how this looks like grass too, so yeah. But what I did is I took this tree and then instanced it 1 million times and then shrunk it down to be very, very small. And those 1 million trees, when they're colored green, actually look like perfect moss or grass. So that was how I did that. It's pretty wild, and my poly count for the rendering is probably in the billions or trillions. But yeah, my computer amazingly handles it just fine. I brought this up. I even was able to crank this number up to 10 million, but then it started to slow down a bit. And I mean, it's really incredible to think about it, that I'm copying this geometry over millions of times, and my computer is amazingly handling it decently, and I'm actually pretty surprised about it. It's very powerful. Yeah, I agree, it kind of is crazy. I could have just used a material to color it green, but I wanted to take it a step further and actually do it with real geometry and just see if my computer can handle the task, I guess. So yeah, that's how I did that. Yeah, I would love to be able to get like have a simulation with like, I want to be able to have a particle simulation of like billions of particles. Now, my computer I don't think will handle that, unfortunately, but maybe if I upgrade sometime it will, and Blender's code definitely has to be optimized to handle stuff like that. Because I used an external simulator program to simulate particles, and I cranked the number up to like 10 million, and Blender just turned completely halted, and it just became really slow. How old are you? So I'm 23. Yeah. And I've been using Blender a few years, but been using it more recently. So yeah. Now I got kind of a complex node set up here, but probably not going to explain this whole thing now because it's a little bit complex, but I could go through it a little bit. So just going to delete some of these nodes that I don't need. Like this one's not connected to anything. This one I don't need. So I'm taking in the image, denoising it, and then I'm adding in, I have my miss pass here. And these are render passes, so this miss pass is basically taking distance data and then converting it to a black and white image. So anything that's darker is closer to the camera, anything that's brighter is farther away. And I'm mapping that range to between dark to a bluish color like this, and then I add that on top of the original image, which is the image here, and then that just gives me fog, which is adjustable. Continue with your work. Yeah, thank you for checking in. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed this. Yeah. So yeah, this adjusts the fog. And then I added in a little bit of lens distortion, which you could go really crazy with, but don't really like to go too crazy with it. Then I added in some glare. Little bit of sunbeams, which I positioned here. Added that on top. That makes a nice glare. Then I took the box mask, blurred it, and then the edges are darker, so I multiplied the image by that. Gives me a nice vignette effect. Then I took the image, and then I took a texture, a noise texture, blurred it slightly, multiplied the image by that to add some film grain, then brightened it back up because I multiplied it. So I added it by the inverse. Then I did some mild sharpening. Then I did some watercolor grading. And that's how I got my image. And let's turn on the denoise node. And honestly, I could take this a bit further, but I think I'm pretty happy with this. Let's see, does anybody have any questions? Okay. So I'm going to X this one out because I don't need it. And I'm going to do a more high resolution render at 256 samples. Just render that again. And you can see before I do that I separated the passes here. And that could allow you to do some more advanced stuff, but I didn't do that. But you could always set that up. So while this is rendering, let's just talk about hardware. So, one of the things that Blender does is you will notice if you have a bad GPU that if you're using GPU rendering, it will not go much faster than CPU. So graphics cards are definitely very important for Blender. But if you're using a graphics card and your scene is extremely complex, your geometry is massive, you have lots of polygons, you may run into an issue where your virtual memory gets eaten up, and then there's no way you can do it with your graphics card. So in that case, you would want to have a good CPU with lots of memory and, RAM. And that's when your CPU speed becomes important. And CPU is also very important for physics, simulations, particle systems, and again, if you're using CPU rendering, which you may have to if your GPU can't handle the amount of virtual memory requirement, then your CPU becomes very important. And the latest Ryzen 3990X CPUs are extremely fast and in some cases are, I believe, actually getting near GPU speed, which is amazing. So yeah, this is rendering. And yeah, I do plan on using the scene further, and I'm gonna be doing some more work with it. Like, I'm gonna be probably making like an animation, maybe make some more spaceships, and then have them flying through with an aerial view of the scene. It will look really cool. Of course, it'll have to be bigger, but I think this, I think this looks. I don't know. It's not exactly photorealistic, but it's getting there. So maybe if I just spend a little bit more work on it, I could just um, add in the final details. But yeah. Almost ready. Now, viewer node. That looks great, I think. Now, can do some final touches, like maybe just adjust the colors a little bit further. Let's see, should I bring that down? Well, first of all, I'm going to disable the noise because it slows things down. I think the brightness would look better if it was higher, so I'm going to leave that up. I don't need that much contrast, so I'm going to take that down a little bit. .35 should be good. So, yeah, let's see how the lens distortion looks. Honestly, I feel like the lens distortion is too extreme and it's not actually nice looking. Like a lot of people I notice place lens distortion in, but all I see it doing is just blurring things. And I don't like it too much because I feel like it blurs things all over and I'm not happy with it. So I'm going to try to place this in a more advanced way. And I'm going to set something up so it doesn't blur the whole thing. So I could just add in like a mix shader. And then add in an ellipse mask. And set that to be larger. Maybe bigger, just so it's blurred, just adding dispersion in the very edges. And I can just add in another blur node, fast Gaussian, set it to like, I don't know, maybe 50 or even 100. That should be good. And then invert it. so that the only place where dispersion will be added is here. And the ellipse mask can be changed so that it's less wide but taller. So something like that's a little bit better. Let's use that as the factor for where to mix it in. And then the lens distortion can be added to the bottom. And then the original image can be added here. Then this can just go there. And let's view that. So now if you add in a lot of distortion, you will get artifacts. I believe. Oh, I actually did it incorrectly. Let's try it again. So look at this. So what's going on now is that it's only adding dispersion to the outer edges. So this is generally a nice effect. That's kind of how I make a custom dispersion setup, so to say. Something like that. So I could have just done that, but I'm gonna go less extreme. And I feel like this ellipse mesh should be a little bit more blurry. I want to add a very slight amount. I lost the option. Where is the setting that I was on just before? Ah, there it is. .02. Kind of think that looks good. So it's just something very subtle. I'm not liking how it's blurring the branches though. I'm thinking that this image might just not look good with dispersion, honestly, so I'm actually gonna just delete this setup, I think, unless I use the projector setup. Yeah, that looks better. Set it to like 0.02. You know what, maybe we could have that just go right to here. And then bring down the value a lot. 0.02. Very, very subtle. Maybe bring down the blur. Okay, and I think I'm happy with that actually. So before, it just adds that slight amount of dispersion that just adds that extra realism in. Do not go over the top with the dispersion. It definitely can make things look unrealistic if you add in too much. So be very careful with it. Just add in the littlest amount just to kind of help the image, but don't try to change the image basically. Now, I feel like things could be a little more saturated, so I could always go to here. Oh, of course, I'm not even viewing it through the correct node. That's the problem. That's better. But now it appears like oh, that's why. That has to go there. That looks perfect. And honestly, there's not much more to do after this. I mean, I could change the sharpen value, see what that does. But again, you don't want to go too crazy with this. Otherwise, it just looks bad. So, what's your inspiration? Honestly, hard to say. I kind of just enjoyed using Blender, and I just kind of I do like hard surface modeling. That's what kind of got me started with it. So I started I wanted to create like robots and stuff, and I saw some awesome hard surface robot designs when I browsed the web, and those were really cool. And I kind of want to create an advanced like an animation like Star Wars, but something like that. But of course, for one person, it's a little bit over the top to do something like that all by yourself. But it can be done, I think, if I spend a lot of time on it and kind of find like workarounds to get things done quickly. And I think I could do a short animated film. And that's what I'm going to be working on next, a sci-fi short at some point. I would be very interested in creating one. But as far as my inspiration, again, it was hard surface models. So, yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I'm just going to organize this node tree because things are getting a little bit messy and it can get confusing when these nodes are all over the place. Okay, so that looks a little bit better. And I can re-enable the noise pass, the denoise pass, to make everything clear. And I don't need these ones right now, so I'm going to just bring these over to the side. That looks a little bit better. It gets very hard to stay organized when you have like over 50 nodes, but probably should be creating groups, but yeah. So yeah, if anybody watching this has any suggestions for this design, I would love to hear them. I could change things, and I would take that into consideration, but yeah, so this is pretty much what I got so far. Yeah. I could add in a little bit of smoke with some planes. Like I could do something like I'm just gonna show a quick example of what I could do next. I don't think I'm gonna add this in, but I'll just show you like what I could do. How to keep off distractions. That's a hard one to say. So honestly, if you let's see, how would I say this? So I do get distracted sometimes when I do Blender, but as long as you could like focus for like an hour or two at a time, you can get things done pretty good. Just basically stick with it, and if you get distracted, it probably means you don't enjoy it. So try to make artwork that you enjoy, and that should help with getting distracted, because if you enjoy doing something, it'll be harder to get distracted as easily. If you're making something that you don't really want to make, and that you feel like you can't like succeed in, then you will tend to get distracted more easily when doing projects like that. So try to make stuff you're interested in making, and that's one of the main things that will make you succeed. At least that's my advice in it. Yeah. So, like, I could do something like this. And then just give this a very basic texture. Go to the shader editor, give it a new texture, and just set it up to be let's see, my frame all, just so you can see everything. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a mix shader. Mix shader, and I'm going to set that up so that it mixes between this and a transparent shader. And then I'm going to add in a noise texture, and also in a texture coordinate. and use the factor of this noise texture to mix in and set up a color ramp. Apply the scale. Bring down the scale a lot. Even more. Bring up the detail. And now I can mix in those coordinates with the Musgrave texture. Like vector math. So this one. And then I can also take in a math node. Then we'll multiply that by something like 0.2 to decrease the intensity of it. And then I'm feeding that into a noise texture should allow me to make some kind of smoke-like effect. So let's see. Scale is too big. This doesn't seem... Oh, I forgot to apply the coordinate. That's the problem. Okay. There it goes. Now it's working. Alright. Whenever I open up Blender, I want to make something, but I just couldn't make anything. Yeah, there's plenty of tutorials on YouTube about making things on Blender, and I will be releasing a lot of free tutorials on YouTube that are completely free. And of course I have Patreon only tutorials, but I will be releasing lots of tutorials that are completely free, and they will be on my YouTube coming up soon, so you can definitely stay tuned to that. And I'll be covering a lot of topics like compositing, modeling, texturing, and eventually animating, and particles, importing objects from other software, sound design, special effects, all that stuff I will eventually be getting to. And I'll be doing tutorials aimed at beginners so that beginners can also get familiar with Blender, and I'll be making tutorials for more advanced users so that people that are want very advanced tutorials can also watch them. So I'll probably be uploading these within, I'll try to get out a few videos each month, maybe 10 videos a month. I'll try, maybe 5 to 10 or so. And I'll try to stay with that kind of schedule. So, yeah. And of course, the project files will be released too. So, yeah. So, with this, I think I have to bring down the scale to like 0.05. And then that's what I wanted to do. Now we need to use this and also bring in another mask. Let's see, what's it called? Okay, I forget what the name of this one is. I know it's here somewhere though. Oh, gradient. Gradient. Gradient texture. Okay. And then I gotta set that to be spherical. And now you notice that the coordinates are going from the left side, so we need to fix that, and we could just use object coordinates. And now we also, for some reason, can't see it. Let's see if we can fix that. Not sure what's going on with this. Ah, okay, there it is. Okay, something odd is going on with this. Could just use generated and then move it over a little bit, I think. Should fix everything. Yes. So I want to widen that up. So now we got a mask to hide any smoke that goes towards the edges so that the edges won't be visible. Otherwise you would notice this plane. So that's very simple. So we just take this and then we take that and we add in a mix shader and then just, mix RGB and multiply them together so that everything towards the edges is colored black so that you won't have the edges showing, and then you plug that into the mix shader. There it goes. Everything is working. This is kind of how you can make like fake smoke, but it's not that visible, so has to be turned up a little bit. Doesn't look bad actually, no. Doesn't look bad at all. So like, let's say that we want it to be a little bit stronger. We can always bring up the values. And we could change the color to be more dusty. Yeah. You could scale it down. Then go to where the camera is. And let's see what that looks like. So now it doesn't seem like it's too noticeable, but it is there. Oh, it's rotated the wrong way. I'm sorry if this is a little slow. Just takes a little time to set up. Okay, now it's showing up pretty good. And you could change the color of the smoke. Let's make it blue. And then we can like just array that a lot of times. And watch how much fog there will be. And that's being done with no volumetrics at all, which is pretty incredible. And no compositing either. That's all done with planes. Which is interesting. And you can also have it like emit light. So you could have it like, I don't know, like orange. It kind of gives a more dusty look, but you can have more blue. You could set this way up to like 10. Now it just looks crazy. But yeah, that's kind of how you make smoke, but without having to set up simulations, and it can just speed things up. But I'm going to delete that because I don't want that, and I think I'm actually going to conclude this stream, because I think I'm pretty happy with how things came out, so let's actually just render that one more time. 256 samples. Interesting. I will be waiting. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I hope these videos help you guys. If you guys have any questions, just ask them in the comments, and I'll try to answer anything as quick as possible. And one thing I wanted to throw in there is that if you are making leaf textures, this is just a tip. Like if you go to the materials, so like for instance on my tree, I chose the leaves. Do not make anything. Do not make the leaves like 100% saturated or 100% bright. It just will break the realism, and it's just generally not realistic for tree leaves to be super contrasty or super duper bright. And that's one thing I found that improved the realism a lot, is just making the leaves not so vibrant, basically, the colors. And I just increase, but you can increase the vibrancy and the compositing Just don't make the materials too intense, basically. Like if this green was super rich, it would look like it doesn't, it almost would look fake, so that's one thing I kind of try to avoid. But of course the moss I made vivid. And I cannot wait until geometry nodes is like really advanced. I wanted things to be completely procedural. It could make things very advance things very easily doable, and it would just expand Blender a lot. This procedural workflow, and is very powerful. So I can't wait to see how Blender advances in the future. So this is almost done. Almost ready. Okay, it's going to start compositing now. And yeah, that's how it looks. So let's take one final look at the compositing setup and see how it looks. So we go from this, which is our original image, to this. Just gonna wait. Yeah. Let's see, is the colors too saturated? Could be. Hard to say. I think everything's good. Could bring this up a bit more actually. Might be a little bit too bright. Hard to say. I think that's good right there. Okay, yeah. I don't think I'm going to change anything else. I think I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah. If anybody else has any questions, I can answer them, so feel free to ask anything. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm gonna conclude it, so again, these files are gonna be on my Patreon. I hope these videos helped you guys understand Blender better. I know that Blender crashed a lot. It was definitely a problem at some times, like Blender just kept crashing over and over, but I just made this video to kind of show my whole workflow from start to finish, and at least I try to make things understandable, but it's definitely takes some time to get used to Blender, and especially playing with the advanced settings. I didn't even think it was possible for me to start making a project like this, but yeah, I think this came out okay. Probably will improve this a little bit off camera, but for this video, yeah, I think this is how I'm going to leave it. Thank you guys for watching. Yeah, and I will probably have new videos out with new tutorials soon. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video.